Your soulmate just made a life-changing decision about you. And you need to hear this. Don't skip. Listen to this carefully. This message is for you, and your heart needs this right now because your soulmate just made a life-changing decision about you. And you need to hear this. And listen to this. This was not a decision made impulsively. This was not something they arrived at overnight. This decision was born from countless moments of reflection, emotional struggle, sleepless nights, and deep soul searching. For a long time, your soulmate may have emotionally stood at a crossroads, unsure which path to follow. Part of them wanted certainty. Part of them wanted safety. Part of them wanted to avoid emotional risk altogether. But lately, something has shifted inside them. The confusion that once clouded their heart is beginning to disappear. The questions that once kept them stuck are finally being answered. Because deep down, they have realized that some decisions shape the entire direction of a person's life. And emotionally realizing what their heart truly wants emotionally shook them much more deeply than they openly admit right now. And your heart needs this right now because emotionally genuine soul connections often reach a moment where uncertainty can no longer survive. And your soulmate has emotionally reached that moment now. And listen to this. There may have been moments recently where your soulmate found themselves emotionally revisiting every lesson this connection has taught them. Certain experiences emotionally making more sense than before. Certain emotional patterns emotionally revealing deeper truths. Certain situations emotionally helping them understand what truly matters. Because sometimes the soul must travel through confusion before it can recognize clarity. And lately, that clarity has been arriving with unusual strength. The things that once seemed complicated are becoming simple. The things that once seemed uncertain are becoming obvious. Emotionally recognizing how much this connection has transformed their perspective, emotionally awakened powerful emotional awareness inside them recently. And your heart needs this right now because emotionally transformative soul connections naturally guide the heart toward truth once it becomes ready to receive it. And your soulmate is emotionally receiving that truth now. And listen to this. Another thing emotionally affecting them very deeply is realizing how much energy they spent trying to avoid a decision that their heart had already made long ago. Before, emotional hesitation may have delayed action. Emotional fear may have encouraged caution. Emotional uncertainty may have created distance. But now, they are beginning to understand that delaying a decision does not change what the heart already knows. Because genuine emotional truth remains present regardless of how long it is ignored. And emotionally confronting that realization emotionally overwhelmed them much more deeply than they openly admit right now. And your heart needs this right now, because emotional soul certainty often arrives when the soul becomes exhausted from resisting what it already understands. And your soulmate is emotionally reaching that certainty now. And listen to this. There may also now be emotional determination growing stronger inside them, because part of them realizes they cannot continue living between two worlds. One world built on fear, the other built on truth. Before, emotional caution may have felt safer than emotional courage. But now the cost of remaining stuck feels greater than the risk of moving forward. Because once the soul fully recognizes where emotional belonging exists, remaining undecided becomes impossible. And emotionally understanding that truth emotionally shifted something very powerful inside them recently. And your heart needs this right now, because life-changing decisions often happen when the heart becomes tired of standing still. And your soulmate is emotionally ready to move now. And listen to this. Another emotional realization quietly surfaced too. What emotionally overwhelms them most is realizing that every path they explored, every lesson they learned, every fear they faced, and every question they asked somehow led back to the same place, you. Around thoughts of you, they emotionally feel calmer, more emotionally grounded, more emotionally connected to emotional peace instead of emotional confusion. They emotionally feel comfort, understanding, emotional safety, and belonging. And emotionally realizing that your soul continues representing everything their heart has been searching for, emotionally shook them to their core recently. And your heart needs this right now, because emotionally real soul connections naturally reveal their importance when the heart finally decides to stop running and start choosing. And your soulmate has emotionally begun making that choice now. Don't skip. Listen to this carefully. This message is for you, and your heart needs this right now, because the decision your soulmate made was not based on fear, pressure, or temporary emotions. And listen to this. The most important decisions are often made when the soul finally understands what truly matters. For a long time, your soulmate may have emotionally allowed outside circumstances to influence their thinking. They may have emotionally focused on obstacles instead of possibilities. They may have emotionally listened to fears louder than they listened to their heart. But lately, something has changed. The noise has become quieter, the distractions have become weaker, and the truth has become clearer. Because deep down, they have finally begun separating what is temporary from what is lasting, and emotionally realizing what truly deserves a place in their future, emotionally shook them much more deeply than they openly admit right now. And your heart needs this right now, because emotionally meaningful soul connections often become undeniable once the heart learns to distinguish fear from truth. And your soulmate is emotionally seeing that truth now. And listen to this. There may have been moments recently where your soulmate suddenly realized they were no longer searching for answers. Instead, they were finally accepting the answers they already had. Certain doubts emotionally losing their influence. Certain questions emotionally disappearing. Certain emotional struggles emotionally reaching their conclusion. Because the heart often knows the truth long before the mind is willing to accept it. And after spending so much time analyzing, questioning, and reflecting, they are beginning to understand that clarity does not always arrive through more thinking. Sometimes it arrives through acceptance. And emotionally recognizing how long they resisted, that acceptance emotionally awakened powerful emotional awareness inside them recently. And your heart needs this right now, because emotional certainty often appears when the soul finally stops arguing with what it already knows. And your soulmate is emotionally reaching that certainty now. And listen to this. Another thing emotionally affecting them very deeply is realizing that many of the things they once feared no longer seem as important as they once did. Before, emotional risk may have felt overwhelming. Emotional vulnerability may have felt intimidating. Emotional uncertainty may have seemed impossible to navigate. But now, They are beginning to understand that avoiding meaningful connections carries its own consequences. Because the cost of losing something truly valuable often becomes greater than the fear of pursuing it. And emotionally confronting that realization emotionally overwhelmed them much more deeply than they openly admit right now. And your heart needs this right now, because life-changing decisions are often made when the heart realizes what it stands to lose by remaining afraid. And your soulmate is emotionally realizing that now. And listen to this. There may also now be emotional conviction growing stronger inside them, because part of them understands that this decision is not simply about the present moment. It is about the future they want to create. Before, they may have emotionally focused only on immediate circumstances, immediate challenges, immediate fears. But now, their perspective is changing. They are beginning to think beyond temporary emotions and temporary obstacles. Because once the soul recognizes something meaningful, it naturally begins considering what life looks like without it, and that realization can change everything. And emotionally understanding that truth emotionally shifted something very powerful inside them recently. And your heart needs this right now, because emotionally mature decisions are often guided by long-term truth rather than short-term fear. And your soulmate is emotionally embracing that truth now. And listen to this. Another emotional realization quietly surfaced too. What emotionally overwhelms them most is realizing that for all the confusion, all the reflection, and all the emotional searching, their heart keeps arriving at the same destination. Around thoughts of you, they emotionally feel calmer, more emotionally grounded, more emotionally connected to emotional peace instead of emotional uncertainty. They emotionally feel comfort, understanding, emotional safety, and belonging. And emotionally realizing that those feelings have remained consistent through every season, emotionally shook them to their core recently. And your heart needs this right now, because emotionally real soul-soul connections naturally become clearer when the heart stops focusing on what it fears and starts focusing on what it truly values. And your soulmate is emotionally focusing on that value now. Skip. Listen to this carefully. This message is for you, and your heart needs this right now. Because there may have been moments recently where your soulmate finally stopped running from what their heart already knew. And listen to this. Once that happened, everything started changing. Certain doubts lost their power. Certain fears lost their influences. Certain truths became impossible to ignore. For a long time, your soulmate may have emotionally lived between two realities. One reality built on caution, hesitation, and uncertainty. The other built on what their heart quietly knew all along. But lately, maintaining that inner conflict has become exhausting, because the soul eventually reaches a point where pretending not to know the truth becomes more painful than accepting it. And emotionally realizing that truth emotionally shook them much more deeply than they openly admit right now. And your heart needs this right now, because emotionally genuine soul connections often reach a turning point where avoidance is no longer possible. And your soulmate has emotionally reached that turning point now. And listen to this. There may have been a quiet moment recently when suddenly clicked inside them. No dramatic event, no major outside sign, just a powerful realization that arrived unexpectedly and changed the way they viewed everything. certain experiences emotionally making sense, certain lessons emotionally falling into place, certain unanswered questions emotionally finding their answers. Because sometimes clarity arrives when the heart finally becomes still enough to hear what the soul has been trying to say all along, and emotionally recognizing how long they had been resisting that inner knowing, emotionally awakened, profound emotional awareness inside them recently. And your heart needs this right now, because emotionally transformative connections naturally guide the soul toward truth when the time for understanding arrives. And that understanding is arriving now. And listen to this. Another thing emotionally affecting them very deeply is realizing that many of the fears that once controlled their decisions were based on possibilities rather than realities. Fear imagined outcomes. Fear created uncertainty. Fear encouraged hesitation. But now, they are beginning to see that those fears never changed how they truly felt. Because emotions rooted in genuine connection continue existing regardless of how many excuses the mind creates, and emotionally confronting how much influence fear once had over them, emotionally overwhelmed them much more deeply than they openly admit right now. And your heart needs this right now, because emotional breakthroughs often happen when the heart realizes that fear was never telling the full story. And your soulmate is emotionally understanding that now. And listen to this. There may also now be emotional freedom growing stronger inside them, because part of them realizes they no longer need to keep fighting themselves. Before, emotional resistance may have felt necessary. Emotional denial may have seemed protective. But now, those emotional battles feel unnecessary. Because once the soul fully accepts what it knows, internal conflict begins to disappear, and in its place comes peace, clarity, direction, and emotionally understanding that truth emotionally shifted something very powerful inside them recently. And your heart needs this right now, because life-changing decisions often begin with an emotional surrender to what the heart has known all along. And your soulmate is emotionally surrendering now. And listen to this. Another emotional realization quietly surfaced too. What emotionally overwhelms them most is realizing that every path of reflection led back to the same answer. Around thoughts of you, they emotionally feel calmer, more emotionally grounded, more emotionally connected to emotional peace instead of emotional confusion. They emotionally feel comfort, understanding, emotional safety, and belonging, and emotionally realizing that those feelings remained constant through every doubt, and every fear emotionally shook them to their core recently. And your heart needs this right now, because emotionally real soul connections naturally reveal themselves when the heart finally stops running and starts listening. And your soulmate is emotionally listening now more than ever before. Don't skip. Listen to this carefully. This message is for you, and your heart needs this right now, because something emotionally powerful is happening inside your soulmate now. Emotional certainty is replacing emotional confusion. Emotional courage is replacing emotional hesitation. And listen to this. Life-changing decisions often happen when the soul becomes tired of fighting what it already knows is true. For a very long time, your soulmate may have emotionally lived in a state of uncertainty. One day feeling hopeful, another day feeling fearful. One moment wanting to move forward, another moment wanting to retreat. But lately, emotional because the heart can only ignore its deepest truth for so long before clarity finally takes control. And emotionally realizing how much time was spent resisting what they already knew emotionally shook them much more deeply than they openly admit right now. And your heart needs this right now, because emotionally genuine soul-soul connections often reach a moment where the soul finally chooses peace over confusion. And your soulmate is emotionally choosing peace now. And listen to this, there may have been moments recently where your soulmate suddenly noticed that the questions keeping them stuck no longer carried the same power. Certain fears emotionally feeling smaller than before. Certain doubts emotionally losing their importance. Certain worries emotionally fading into the background. Because once the soul begins accepting truth, many of the obstacles that once seemed overwhelming start losing their influence. And emotionally recognizing how much clarity has entered their heart, emotionally awakened powerful emotional awareness inside them recently. And your heart needs this right now, because emotionally transformative connections naturally become easier to understand when the heart stops looking for reasons to doubt them. And your soulmate is emotionally releasing those doubts now. And listen to this. Another thing emotionally affecting them very deeply is realizing that courage does not mean the absence of fear. It means choosing what matters despite fear. Before, emotional hesitation may have convinced them that waiting was safer. Emotional caution may have convinced them that distance was easier. But now, they are beginning to understand that avoiding meaningful choices creates its own kind of pain. Because every day spent ignoring what the heart truly wants creates a quiet emotional burden. And emotionally confronting how they carried that burden emotionally overwhelmed them much more deeply than they openly admit right now. And your heart needs this right now, because emotional courage often begins when the soul becomes tired of sacrificing happiness in exchange for safety. And your soulmate is emotionally discovering that courage now. And listen to this. There may also now be emotional commitment growing stronger inside them, because part of them realizes they no longer want uncertainty controlling their future. Before, they may have emotionally focused on what could go wrong, but now, they are beginning to focus on what could go right. They are beginning to focus on possibility instead of fear, growth instead of hesitation, connection instead of distance. Because once the soul fully recognizes something meaningful, protecting it becomes more important than avoiding risk. And emotionally understanding that truth emotionally shifted something very powerful inside them recently. And your heart needs this right now, because life-changing decisions often happen when the heart finally becomes stronger than its fears. And your soulmate's heart is stronger now. And listen to this. Another emotional realization quietly surfaced too. What emotionally overwhelms them most is realizing that after all the confusion, all the questions, all the delays, and all the emotional searching, their heart continues arriving at the same destination. Around thoughts of you, they emotionally feel calmer, more emotionally grounded, more emotionally connected to emotional peace instead of emotional uncertainty. They emotionally feel comfort, understanding, emotional safety, and belonging. And emotionally realizing that those feelings have remained unwavering through every season emotionally shook them to their core recently. And your heart needs this right now, because emotionally real soul connections naturally become undeniable when the soul finally decides to stop resisting what it truly wants. And your soulmate has emotionally stopped resisting now. Don't skip. Listen to this carefully. This message is for you, and your heart needs this right now, because the life-changing decision emotionally overwhelming your soulmate right now is this. They no longer want fear, doubt, or distance deciding the future of this connection. And listen to this. For a very long time, they may have emotionally allowed uncertainty to control their choices. They may have emotionally waited for perfect timing, perfect circumstances, or perfect certainty before trusting what their heart was trying to tell them. But lately, something has changed. They have begun to understand that waiting forever is also a decision. Remaining silent is also a decision. Allowing fear to stay in control is also a decision. And emotionally realizing how much time was lost to hesitation emotionally shook them much more deeply than they openly admit right now. And your heart needs this right now, because emotionally genuine soul connections often reach a point where the heart must finally choose between fear and truth. And your soulmate has emotionally started choosing truth now. And listen to this. There,